This is the complete timeline of Attack on Titan. Let's start with the very first moment in which the very first life on Earth was created, the Hallucigenia. This worm in the story is the source of all living matter. Skip forward a few thousand or million years and we get to the time of the rise of Eldia. The Eldians were very powerful and quickly became one of the strongest nations in the world. One of the places that they eventually end up conquering was a small village at the time named Marley. This is where we are first introduced to the founder, Ymir Fritz. When the Eldians conquered Marley, they enslaved most, if not all, the people who were already living there, conducting horrible acts towards them, including cutting out their tongues so they were unable to speak. One day, Ymir saw a pig trapped in a pen and decided to let it escape. Later on, the leader of Eldia at the time, King Fritz, found out about this and ordered the slave who let it escape to confess. Everyone instantly rats on Ymir and the king tells her that she is now free. But by free, he meant they were going to chase her down and kill her essentially. As Ymir was running for her life, she gets shot by an arrow. In a desperate search for cover, she stumbles across a giant tree with an opening at the very base. Naturally, she goes inside in hopes to escape her pursuers, and after a while she falls down into a massive underwater cave within the tree. This is where she first comes into contact with the source of all living matter that we discussed earlier. Ymir wished for a strong, immortal body and she was granted that power by the Hallucigenia. This was the very point in which the very first Titan was created. After this, Ymir returns to Eldia and agrees to serve the king as his personal servant. For many years, Ymir continued to serve him, crushing nations, building infrastructure, and eventually coming to bear his children. Their names were Sina, Rose, and Maria, which later in the show is what the walls are named after. At one point during what looks like some sort of conference, an assassin attempts to kill King Fritz by throwing a large spear towards him. However, Ymir jumps in front of the spear and saves the king's life. As someone with the power of the Titans, Ymir should have been able to heal and survive the injury. However, she no longer had the will to live, which meant that she passed away. In fear of losing the power of the Titans, King Fritz forced their daughters to eat Ymir in hopes of transferring the power to them. It was at this point where Ymir arrives in the paths. She sees a glowing tree-like construct with 3 large branches. These branches representing the fact that Ymir's power had now been passed down and was now residing within her 3 daughters, each of which was granted 3 of the 9 Titans. Also, since Ymir died 13 years after she gained her powers, everyone who inherits this power is now inflicted by the curse of Ymir, meaning that once they have had the power for 13 years, they will also perish. When their daughters eventually died, the same ritual was carried out on them and it became an endless cycle. The Eldians used the 9 Titans and continued to destroy other nations and forced those people to bear children with the blood of Ymir. Eventually, each of the 9 Titans, bar the founding Titan, were given to other noble families outside of the royal family. Many generations down the road and the founding Titan lands in the hands of a man named Karl Fritz, who is ashamed of his bloodline's actions and believes that the Eldians should not be forgiven. This conflict of interest between Karl Fritz and the other noble families caused the Great Titan War. At the end of the war, the Fritz family and the Tiber family reach an agreement. Karl Fritz will flee to a small island known as Paradis with the founding Titan and a whole bunch of Eldian people. When Karl Fritz arrived on the island, he erected 3 giant walls made of colossal Titans. He then announces to the outside world that if provoked, he will unleash the millions of colossal Titans within the walls and destroy the Earth. However, as we know, this was just a bluff.